You just have to keep going. You have to want it enough to wake up tomorrow and do the same thing over.
This was me being a hustler.
The only way that I've gotten to this point in my life is to try to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Welcome to Ground Zero Growth with your host, Sam Sapp, owner of Lockbod.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ground Zero Growth. I'm joined today with Meghan Hovee, owner of Hovee & Company. How are you doing today, Meghan?
Doing well, Sam. It's an honor. Honor to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute honor to have you. So, how we like to start the questioning is kind of tell me a little bit about your business and what you're doing now and kind of what a day-to-day looks like at Hovee & Company.
Yeah. Again, thank you for having me and having us, by extension, our firm. So I own a local accounting firm. We are predominantly women in our firm, and that hasn't been intentional per se, but it has made for a really fun, vibrant culture. And so we are a small local accounting firm. We are very hyper-focused on small business. That is our only clientele, our small business owners, and we serve them with a very succinct set of services, so tax, accounting, and other advising in those realms. And we now have two offices, one just north of the river, residential Briarcliff area, and one a little further south in Ward Parkway. So we can kind of serve those two groups of people here in Kansas City. And yeah, day to day, it really does look like just being in the grind with the small business owner, helping them just get a little more peace of mind and a little more regularity and confidence in their sort of back office and number side of their business so they can really thrive in the day-to-day operations of it. So that's a little bit about who we are.
I love that. So I'm already going to break from the normal questioning. We talked about it a little bit beforehand, and I can already tell this is what I want to talk about. I think this is what you want to talk about. So I'm just going to kind of start with, so my first impression in your business, like you said, majority woman-owned ran, but then also it seems like, so when I came on, somebody within your company was pregnant with a child, and then somebody else, and then somebody, and it seems to be like a semi-regular thing. But you're also small business, so it's every one of those represents a significant percentage of your business. And I'm going to come out and say it, and it's ignorance, I think, probably on my part, but my external view historically of women in business, the women I've come across, it really almost seems like in some cases you either kind of put the family on pause and excel and you're hear me roar, or it's like the opposite of that, right? Where it's like, well, I'm in business, but I'm only, it's not going to be hear me roar, and it's not going to be at this certain level. And as far as I can tell, you and your firm have really flown in the face of all of that, because somehow you're having kids, you seem to be growing and present with your family, just from what I can see on an external, and your firm is growing at the same time. So there's no, how are you doing any of that?
I love you calling it out and asking the question. I am more passionate than I probably even realize about it. So I super appreciate that. And I honestly can't wait to share this podcast then with my team after we're done. Literally right before we jumped on this call, I was chatting with our marketing and recruiting teammate about this thing. She said, I can't wait to post this current position in this Northland Moms group because this is what we're made up of. And to be really honest, there have been women that have come to our firm and learned, oh, I can have a career and be a mom, and maybe didn't realize that fully before. So very passionate. I grew up thinking, honestly, just in a very sort of traditional setting where I thought, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom. And fast forward to getting my CPA and my license, and then I started my business at the same time that I started having babies, and they were both like, infants going alongside each other. And I was equally passionate about both of them. And, I feel like in our world, moms have to say, what you watch TV shows, you watch whatever, moms have to say, they have to always preface and make sure that they say, I put my kids first, I'm a mother first. You don't see that forced dynamic upon men a lot of times. And so it's just interesting. But I was equally passionate. It was really nice to go out and serve small business owners and go visit my construction crew that I was helping and go visit my team that was printing and engraving and take a break and then come home and be mom. And I just found so much fulfillment in both. So I discovered it in real life. And then fast forward to when I decided to scale, I thought, I have loved this, but why? And a lot of it was autonomy and was being able to own my schedule. And, you know, when you're a small business owner, you're very results oriented because you're literally feeding your family, as you know, with the work that you're doing. And I thought, well, how can I make this a results oriented sort of workplace where I'm not micromanaging people and I'm not checking to see if you're still on the clock at 4:45 because your sort of expectations can speak for themselves. So all that to say, I really did do a lot to try to cultivate a firm where other people that would be like-minded to me would come in and thrive and not want to leave after a year of a extra busy work tax season. So, and we have done that. And I will say we have so much fun, and we are an accounting firm, and we laugh so much every single day. And we are accountants. Like, that is what we're doing. It's not a facade. So it's something in that has worked, and I am super passionate. And we have had so many babies to the point that clients joke, like, don't drink the water because, and we still take care of our, and I would offer that we take care of our clients even better in a lot of ways as a result of how relational we are. And so, you know, it's worked for us. And I appreciate that you see it as flying in the face of, because we are trying to be a contradiction. Like, and we're not just trying to say that women can work, we're trying to say women can work and have a very fulfilling family life as well. And I one story I've told a few times and I love to tell is when my husband, he did choose to stay at home for a period of time, about a year and a half. It was just a personal choice to be with our children. And we had 3 boys at the time. We now have 4 and final, but we had 3 boys and he chose to stay at home and he wanted to be with them. And it was very strange to me. There was a few people that their response to me when I said, Luke, for a little while, he's going to be a stay-at-home dad. They said, oh, well, what's he going to do? And then they tried to like give him a job and we had one of our kids was an infant, like a brand new baby. And I was like, he's going to make sure the kids survive. Like if I had chosen to stay at home, I don't think someone would have said, well, what job can I give you to do at home in addition to watching your 3 children? You know, people would have just been supportive. But it's just been very interesting to watch, you know, just some of those dynamics that I don't even think that I didn't notice were there. But I appreciate you calling it out. And we are having a blast as a predominantly female firm. We're having a lot of fun with it. So.
Well, I appreciate you commenting. You've clearly seen all aspects of it too, because well, like one thing I had noted, it's wild, but it's exactly what you're saying with regards to like Luke staying at home for a stint and then it flies they, you know, offer a job. It's like, no, it's not that he's not capable. It's that's the decision for the season. And when I remember for me, like I attended, because of the fact small business owner, right? Exactly what you're talking about. It was busy, but I was capable to attend every one of my wife's OBGYN appointments. And it was kind of odd. It felt like I was a third wheel, which was really weird because for her in particular, she had, you know, the term is, I guess, pregnancy brain. She would get all the instructions and information, and then like the next appointment, she would lose it. So I was there taking notes, but I was also there asking a lot of questions. And the moment I started asking questions, it was as if her questions were like easy to answer, very engaged, my questions were like inconvenient. And it was a weird feeling. I'm not used to feeling that way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, you. It's like, what me?
Like, no, I'm really invested in this as well. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's that's been fascinating. Can we talk in more depth on, so what's been, because I know you, I mean, if, you know, 4 kids, you personally have been smack dab in kind of the middle of this. I know for me, so our daughter 4, just the one even, it's obviously a struggle to balance that and the business. But then also, I can't imagine being the ebbs and flows of being pregnant, smack dab in the middle of it, on top of, because there's a lot of stress involved in business. There's a lot of,
Yes.
one of our key roles has decided they've quit and want to go a different direction. And I don't know about you, but I'm always kind of the type of person where it's like, what does that say about me? Did I not
Yes.
foster the environment I should have? And then
Right.
on top of that, I've got this thing living inside of me that's like also taking a degree of toll. Like
Yes.
how did you, is there a particular time in the middle of it, let's say somewhere, where you were like, this is a lot, and why, and what can give and what could give, and how did you manage that
Yeah.
period?
Yeah, appreciate that question as well. And it's insightful to say, like, specifically kind of when you're pregnant, because that is a time where you literally are growing a person. And then there's been times in the business where people say generally, like, oh, you have 4 kids at home, they try to give me sort of like room to say I don't need to go as hard or pedal to the metal as much because of the kids. When people wouldn't necessarily say that to a guy who has 4 kids at home, it's not like, oh, you should work reduced hours. But no, it's true. When you're pregnant and you're expecting and you're preparing for this timeline, and your physical health is kind of more in the under the microscope. So yeah, it's interesting. I think one thing I found is we have different personality types, and we're kind of an interesting study in working women and the different personality types, because there's a few of us who were like, what's a little more chaos? Maybe that'll make the existing chaos less chaotic. Like, it doesn't even make sense. But we go ahead and add, another baby while we're getting a certification, while we're taking on another client. And some of us we live in that chaos. We lean into it. And then others are a lot more controlled about it. But I will say I've noticed there's benefits to both sides. Like, there's this adaptability to those of us that kind of are, again, lean into the chaos. And then there's this sort of methodical nature and this really pragmatic, like, well-planned, rhythmic characteristic of the person that's like, no, I'm going to wait because it's tax season. So I think I'll go ahead and wait until I have the next baby. So it's interesting. So all that to say, it has been hard at times, but I don't know. I think family life in general, I think a lot about, like you said, how much flexibility you can have sometimes as a business owner. And again, I've tried to kind of recreate that for my team so that I have longevity of employees. But I think we take for granted, generally, it is hard. It's hard to do family life well and like live and work in a work culture that's 9 to 5. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But I think sometimes we forget that it's just hard to do in general, to be there and be present as a parent, and to also kind of give your all. And it kind of gets into a question about, I know one of like the things you talk about sometimes on this podcast is your what have been your areas of growth? And for me, it's definitely been, I've had to learn sort of personal care, self-care along the road of being a business owner. And that's probably been one of the most fundamental things that has impacted how we've grown as a firm and how I've grown as a business leader. So I think it's hard in general. Being pregnant adds a layer, but I think it's difficult for all of us who are parents or family members, even if you have a parent at home that you're caregiving to, it's not, I don't think it's supposed to be easy as human beings to have this strong, serious, intense commitment and then also be present and show up in your personal life. So we all kind of play that, walk that line, I think. But
No, you're not wrong, even just from the business owner sense than any other. And I don't think it's just been me. I think that's kind of the point of the podcast to some end, but I've experienced more growth as a result of the business. And then to your credit of them not being at odds with each other, or antithetical, or I can't even think of the word. I remember lessons. So there's one distinct individual, and it seems kind of silly in retrospect, but Sophia was standing up and was starting to stand up, right? And obviously you're standing up, you fall over a lot. And first kid, I'm a little bit of a helicopter parent. And the same day I hire my first real employee, and the same day I first really kind of let off the reins. And I'm like, look, I don't know exactly how chaotic this is going to go, but I'm going to give you access to stuff you need access to. I'm going to have you go solve the things you need to solve, and then we're going to give you an opportunity to fail. And then they didn't, was like the same day Sophia stands up, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to catch you, so let's see how this plays out. And anyway, it was just a fun growing moment.
Yeah, that's very cool. Something you won't ever forget, I imagine.
I don't think so. I don't think so. It's been a wild ride. So speaking of wild rides, let's get back to let's turn back the clock. And let's go to, I like to zero in on like high school-ish, because in high school, in my mind, wherever you're at, probably not where you're really going to stay long term, you have this idea, this childlike dream in your head of what you wanted to do with your life and what you might do. And then also there's these external influences saying, don't get me wrong, but I did make the joke the other day, maybe you should be an accountant or an attorney or a lawyer or something like that. What was it you wanted to do, and what was it did you go to college? Where did you go to college? What did you go to college for?
Oh, good questions. I did 2 years of a volunteer program outside of high school before I ever started college. And like your dad would always ask you, what are you getting from that? Like what kind of certification? Nothing. It is actually very altruistic. I'm literally not walking away with anything. So I took a couple years to do that, and then I started college. I went to college, long story as to why, but I went to college in the Midwest. I grew up in the Northwest in Washington. Went to community college in Nebraska. Apologies for the lawnmower out here. Went to community college in Nebraska, and then transferred here to Kansas City. And ultimately, I graduated from Rockhurst in Kansas City, which is why I landed here and stayed. I fell in love with Kansas City. But I thought I was going to do something pretty humanitarian, relatively speaking. So I was going to do education. I was then going to do psychology. And I kept, in my part-time jobs, I kept going back to being a bank teller. And I freaking loved being a bank teller, which how many people can say that? And so I thought, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't even know why it was a field of study. Literally business. What is, I had no idea. But I knew that accounting dealt in numbers. So I thought, well, I like being a bank teller, maybe 8 hours a day. I should do numbers. And I heard accounting is numbers. So I decided my next major would be accounting. And then that stuck. Then I learned what business was, and I learned what accounting was. So that was kind of the path that led me to, how I'm in accounting today.
This is fun to hear because I've had a couple people on now. Allison, I think you're familiar with her. She echoed something similar in college, but then Jeb as well was a gentleman that was on. He was a financial advisor. And it's interesting to me listening to the two of those and you, because you're mentioning a process kind of early on and where you know what to do in the college just as a result of, and I'm trying to remember, there was another gentleman too, not specifically as a result of getting in on but he had, as part of college, there was almost like a placement coaching thing where they straight up told him, they were like, look, you're really good, not just at the details, but also at like the legal and the consulting. You should do something in estate planning.
I got specific.
Yes. But it's fascinating to hear that, because it's like, I had a decently different college experience, and it took me, I think, a little bit between roles to find out exactly what it was. But it's cool to hear people like you that can kind of zero in on it faster, on like, okay, bank teller, this is actually a lot of fun.
I mean, don't give me too much credit, because it was my junior year, and that was after 2 years of taking off of school. So I still consider it a fairly long, non-traditional path. But yes, at least
no, that's fair.
The 2 years off did, I think, help me formulate. Whereas if I'd gone straight into college, I probably would have graduated as a teacher and then done a hard right turn into accounting. So yeah, but it was a little non-traditional in how I got there. So.
Okay, but you got there.
I got there.
You got there.
And I was right. I loved it.
Good. So what was your first entry point then into accounting after you're like, look, this is for me? You go on, you become certified. What's kind of your first real gig?
Yeah, so Big Four accounting, like for those that know the business world, that's pretty elite. And so it started off in Big Four, and in some ways, I think I did have the model personality type for that, like really intense world. And then in one very particular way, I did not. What I realized later on is I really missed the other person on the side of the bank teller counter that was smiling at you after you deposited their money or gave them their cash. I really missed that. But I started off in the world of Big Four accounting, which is like just kind of a prestigious um, way track you can be on as a CPA.
Yeah, how was that? Because I've heard differing views from folks with regards to that. And then it's interesting after hearing that, but then also, I don't know if you follow Alex Hermosi at all or not,
Sounds
but
familiar.
he describes this model relatively common in firms, kind of like, for example, the Big Four, where you essentially rise to these key performance indicators, these very high and lofty key performance indicators. You either rise to those or you kind of die. It's a very sink or swim, but it's a sink or swim where it's like our expectation isn't that you tread water. Our expectation is that you run 1,000 laps a day and then are back first thing in the morning to do it again and again and again and again. And his statement was, he's like, on one hand, you get theoretically a decent quantity of high performers. On the other hand, they never go above and beyond, and there's real high burnout and churn. There's only a certain group of people that are going to be able to do that. Does that track with your experience?
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And how long was that experience?
Oh, I lasted 9 months. And again, not because of the rigorous, well, kind of because of the rigorous work schedule. I think as a single person, I could have done that in spades. Like I worked myself to the same extent a few years later when I started my own business. So it was more so the lack of any kind of relational fulfillment in that environment. So when you're doing that and you're behind an Excel spreadsheet day in and day out, and that's when I'm like, I just miss the people, like somebody being happy about this. Walmart doesn't care if I put this number in this Excel doc or not, So yeah, 9 months. 9 months was my tenure in the
Well, and there's also a degree too of, right, like, when the answer is because I told you to, it's kind of like that's only going to go for so long.
Right. Yes. That's a spot on. His description is spot on of my experience.
Yeah, well, and yes, and it falls in, your love of small business is falling in with exactly what I thoroughly enjoy about it too. Where I have this friend, and he recently jumped into small business, kind of a similar sort of situation where he worked for a very big company, and he was like, and he wants to go out and do his thing, and he's like, what should I do? And I'm like, keep doing what you're doing. And he's like, well, no, everybody hates it. I'm like, maybe in big corporate, I don't know, but in small business, we need a lot of what you're doing. And so, anyway, so you 9 months, did you go straight into starting your own business from there?
No, I didn't. So
and what was the burnout like?
Gosh, well, it honestly was just, to be really honest, I felt I was on a team of other folks who were in some ways younger because I had done that non-traditional path, taking 2 years off, but I kind of just felt I was in like a frat sorority environment. And here I was engaged, I was about to get married. So again, just, yes, working 80-hour work weeks at times, but it was less that and more just like not connecting with the type of, like the culture. So that was
80-hour work weeks, plus we're going to hit the bar now and we're going to go ham, and then are you coming along, Megan?
And honestly, I might have said yes if I didn't have my cat at home and then I was about planning a wedding. I might have said yes to that, but it was that was just not the trajectory I was on. It wasn't like, oh, I'm waiting 10 years to settle down. I was ready to kind of move that part of my life forward earlier than the rest of them probably were. But yeah, so I'm all about having a good time, but it just felt like young, and it was a pressure cooker, but then also with like folks that felt like they were still in college. And so it was just kind of a weird culture experience. And I knew I had this skill and this credential, and I could probably use it in a way that served people in a more direct way, and I wanted to explore that. So then my next thing that I hopped to was considering being also a CFP in addition to a CPA. So adding on like the financial planning sort of role. And I dabbled in that with another like local firm, which is a great firm. And then realized over time, I did get series licensed. So I could, for a short minute there, I could have told you what investments to purchase. But over time, I realized, okay, these are two different skill sets. I'm going to let the financial advisors do that thing, and I'm going to focus on like truly the more accounting, more compliance, and teaching people how to do that well, teaching business owners how to do that well. So
interesting. So what I missed too, that so you did essentially go into business for yourself then, pretty much right after out of the gate, but also with the CFP angle.
Yeah, so I went to work for a local financial advisor, but that was short-lived, and I realized, okay, I don't really necessarily want to do the financial planning piece.
Gotcha.
And that's when but when I opened my business, that was not what I was trying to do. I thought I'll do a few tax returns this following tax season, and I will very slowly grow something. And I had no idea how quickly that would explode on me. So I started my business more so I became self-employed, and it just took off. Which was very exciting.
That is very exciting.
And
well, I feel like, I feel like accounting firms is an interesting one, right? Because it's regulated, right? You theoretically have to be a CPA to some end, at least to get some things done for sure. And not everybody can do it. And it's not necessarily, for lack of any better version, it doesn't seem like it's as glamorous right now, for example, as say like cybersecurity. It seems like there's somebody on a regular, or programming or something like that, where there's a lot of folks graduating in tech thinking they know what it's going to look like. And so in a similar sort of way, there's not as many people maybe graduating CPA, but we still need those. It's not like that can go away anytime soon. If there's anything we need, it's accountants and attorneys, and I mean, I could name a few others, but you need those as a business owner in general. So yeah, I could see a scenario where, for you and your firm, it doesn't surprise me too much. It almost seems kind of inevitable in a good way.
Yeah, and I didn't know any of that coming into it, and I kind of learned over time, and not too much time, it didn't take long, but the supply and demand in accounting, who knows what technology will do in the next several years, but the supply and demand was just so out of balance. Like there was so much need for accountants, especially before you get to big corporate dollars as far as like size of business. There's so much demand for like a good accountant you could rely on who'd be somewhat communicative, and it's not very many of them to go around. And I can't tell you how many phone calls, like 9 out of 10 calls, especially when we were doing anything for anybody. We would do just a tax return, or we would do, I can't tell you how many phone calls. It's literally just, I don't know what happened to my CPA. Literally just won't respond anymore. Like they were my CPA yesterday and now I can't get an email back, or like, yeah. So it made it, I didn't realize how quickly I would get inquiries and requests, because you hear of one good accountant that's a nice lady who will answer your email and teach you things a little bit, explain a little better than you have in the past, how quickly people would sign up for that.
So how do you manage that? Just in general, because so you've mentioned a lot of things that are traditionally sort of antithetical, right? So responsiveness, but then also, and kind of harken back to what you said earlier, and something I personally have noticed when it could be the smack dab middle of tax season, which for those blessed ones out there that don't know, this is where 40 hours is a good week, right? You're more likely to be doing something like 60, I'm guessing, but you are welcome to correct me here. And then obviously the kids, you guys are trying to be responsive. This is also the peak time where new business potential happens, because like you said, my CPA was answering yesterday, now not answering, still need to get the filing, deadline is tomorrow. How are you managing to navigate that? Plus then I could show up at your office, and you're right, it's smiles, it's laughs, it's almost kind of confusing, because it's like, I thought it was the middle of tax season. Are you guys do tax filing, right? I'm confused. Right. So how are you navigating? Is there some rules of thumbs you found that, like, look, we can only take on this many new people during tax season, we're not going to take on more, or just can you kind of help me navigate some things that have helped keep that?
Yeah.
Because I don't know of a person that, like, lack of sleep 60 hours that still manages to laugh during the day and not have it be kind of like a healthy laugh.
Exactly. Yeah. So no, yes, we have a couple small rules of thumb, but it's actually more goes back to like a really critical point in business for me when it was when Luke decided to stay at home for a little while. I knew that wasn't going to last for very long. I said, yes, I will attempt to be the breadwinner. And so I went really full time, even more. And at that time, I was getting very, very busy. And I decided I have to make a decision because I saw all these CPAs dropping off. And and I saw the way that a CPA often grew their business didn't serve clients well. So I thought I can only take so many more clients. I can either do a good job being a solo practitioner, or I can grow a firm that maybe tries to impact this industry a little bit and change it for the better because there's such a need. Not because I'm so much better than everybody else, but apparently our industry has not, come up with a really good way to serve the majority of the small business population. So I try to be really intentional. I read the first few chapters of E-Myth by Michael Gerber were really pivotal for me. And I was the accountant, the mechanic, the baker, whatever in that situation.
Such a good book.
Oh man, it's really just your mindset shift. And I asked myself the question, which are you going to do? And if you're going to scale a business, you need a plan. And what I had found was I already had fallen in love with being this outsourced accountant to these business owners. I loved it. I loved helping with different problems every week and having a meeting with the owner. And literally, when you're in accounting and business owners will say to you, I don't know how I would run my business without you, that is one of the most fulfilling things you can hear as a client service provider. So I was in love with that model that was happening organically. I wasn't even marketing it as such. It was happening organically. I was in love with that model, and then I'm deciding I'm going to scale a firm and a team, and the only way I can do that successfully is to keep people for longer than is normal. And how am I going to keep teammates? And I thought, well, this is what I love the most and business owners need the most. They need more than just a tax return every season unless they're very unique. They need more. And I want teammates that will stay, and most teammates want to balance work and family life. So we created a model that serves business owners that then is also fulfilling for the teammates serving those business owners. So that's why over time we've gotten better at defining what do we do, who do we help, how do we do it. And so we have this whole strategy in place to where our tax seasons are not crazy. Like, yeah, we might work 45 hours. We might have a couple weeks as individual accountants where things are a little extra crazy, and maybe they do work 50, maybe 55, but I would say not really. Mostly it's maybe 45 in tax season. So it looks very different when you're around here in tax season than other accounting firms. Like, it does not look crazy. And one thing we're proud of is every April 14th and 15th gets less and less stressful, less and less crazy. It's kind of like even keel, and that's weird to say, but it's been the fruit of a lot of planning and reviewing and strategizing and doing it all over again to make sure, are we serving clients the best we can in a way that keeps us, healthy as an organization.
So in a good way, you have to have some decently rigid rules if you're keeping your tax filers at 45 hours into the 14th and the 15th of April.
And we do. So it's like, you get us your documents by this date, or we will, have to do an extension. It's kind of like parenting a little bit. Like, here's the concept.
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
But honestly, though, because of our model, we work a little bit more billable hours in tax season, but tax season is not our big bread and butter of our year. We don't twiddle our thumbs the rest of the year. We're doing a lot of accounting, advising, bookkeeping, and just walking alongside those folks. So yeah, tax season heats up, but we've created a service model where it doesn't absolutely skyrocket the amount of work we have to do. But yes, we set boundaries.
Gotcha.
We say you got to have documents by this date. We have to have response times. In turn, we honor, you'll see a lot of accounting firms that you have no idea. You submit your documents and you have no idea when you'll hear back. We have response times that we do our absolute best to honor to the client. Hey, if you get us stuff by this, expect a set of questions by this day so that you can be filed by this day. So we really just try to have some structure. Boundaries and structure means everyone is a lot happier. It just, and not everyone,
That's cool.
not every client is for us. If you're just shopping on price, that's not for us. If you're trying to just really push the boundary and maybe do things that are not in compliance with tax code, that's not what we're looking for either. So we do have parameters around the ideal client, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so as you're saying all this too, I'm starting to see a little bit of a trend. There's a bit that I need to make a note here because I definitely want to come back to kind of some hiring practices because you've done a good job. I mean, I can tell you cultivate a team. But one thing I noticed too that I really would love to get into. So you went from, how long have you been in business?
10 years. In September, it'll be 10 years.
10 years now. And you've been married for?
10 years.
There you go. How's that roller coaster been? And then there's a stint where he stayed home for how long?
He lasted a year and a half, I think it was.
Okay. That's just okay, so pardon me, I want to ask what's the secret, but more specifically, I'll zero in what's kind of the secret to navigate ebbs and flows because the husband that stays at home is not the same husband that's working a full-time job. The wife that, I'm going from Big Four to running this business, right? That's like these are different people over the course of just 10 years. And I personally believe that small business entrepreneurship, that turns up the burner to what would normally be, 10 years for some other relationship is going to be different than 10 years of this relationship.
Yes. So how do we do it all? Yeah.
How do you navigate the ebbs of change?
Yes. Man, I will say one thing Luke and I come back to a lot as a couple is I feel like one of our key things is openness to growth as individuals, honestly. And I'm not one of those people that can proudly say I have a growth mindset. Like I have still to this day pretty thin skin when it comes to feedback and, and how do people react to things. So I'm not just like, oh, give me all the feedback. I love it. But at the end of the day, I want to be a happy human being. And I think it's not possible to really attain like a deeper level of happiness without an openness to like where your areas of weakness are and how to grow in them. And I think he and I have said that a lot because to be honest, our values and our principles and those things that we had when we got married at 26, they've changed. Even those things have changed. What we thought we cared about and what we believed even, and those have changed. But we've both been very open to growing. So anytime we have an issue as a couple, or he has an issue as in his career life, or I have an issue in my relationships, we really do try to like hunker down, like talk to people, research, hold each other accountable. So openness to growing, I think, has helped us both continue to deepen our relationship, even in the hard times or the times that are stressful. When, you're trying to share 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 children and also work 2 careers. So that's one thing. But I will say another thing early on when we got married was we did prioritize quality of life over a lot of other priorities that are often upheld in our culture. So like we didn't care if we would rather share a car for a little while and pay down debt and things like that, and then have more time together as a family than to have the nicest, newest vehicles and live in, like we were not interested in keeping up with the Joneses, to be really honest. And then later in life, we have so much more flexibility. He has a really kick-ass career where he has a really good work-life balance. And, I'm now a business owner and have a lot of autonomy in that. But that came as a result of when we were younger in our married days, we were less worried about, do we have the same things as the next door neighbor? And do we live in the most perfect school district? Like we really wanted to figure out how could we be happy as a couple and as a growing family? And then the rest fell into place. And we also wanted to be real passionate about the careers we have. We didn't want to work 9 to 5 jobs that we just were punching a clock. We wanted to enjoy what we were doing. He loves software, like genuinely loves it. And I really love accounting and helping people. So those are some of the things I think have helped.
That's huge. I love that. Actually, there's a podcast I listened to back in the day, ran by an accountant. Radical Personal Finance is what it was called, and it kind of helped me to exactly what you're talking about. It helped me kind of unlock another level of thinking, because you're right. Culturally, it's really upsetting. He gave the example. I don't think, it's like you think of an SUV, what, 50 grand, brand new, nice SUV, the one that people are going out and buying because that's the nice SUV that we all own. He's like, or visit 100 countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his sort of introduction to opportunity cost, which was something I hadn't considered. When we bought our first house, we made the decision because of this podcast. We made the decision pretty early on not to mow the lawn, because he was in the same sort of episode. He was like, Dave Ramsey might tell you mow the lawn to save $40 a month or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, but if you could have somebody else mow the lawn, and that gives you that energy and excitement and growth to then go out and work a job or a side hustle that you're passionate about, making $100, you've net $50 and energy. And, I didn't want to mow the lawn. I'd grown up my whole life mowing the lawn, and I was like, there's nothing against it. I could do it. But, of the list of things, I don't think I want to do that. And it was, so it's interesting. There's something to it. Maybe this is obvious in retrospect, but it sounds like there's something to going in accounting, having an understanding of the numbers and how they play out in reality, versus the cultural element we have now, where we kind of leave. Is it safe to say we kind of leave high school and even college when we don't have a focus with no real understanding of the numbers and what plays out and the value and the lack of credit?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, you get to be old hearing people say it, but there's certain things that we don't teach as fundamentals that should be fundamentals. Like, that is personal finance. You get, 10 minutes on it in a workshop in the course of your education, and then you just kind of stumble your way through first student loans, and then, making purchases before you realize how much life is really going to cost once you do start adding kids, or, there's just a lot there. And so, I think it's helpful. I think one thing that was interesting about Luke and I specifically is I was like the nerdy person that wanted to put a budget together, but maybe was hard pressed to follow the budget. Whereas he didn't care about budgets. He didn't need to. He's a big saver. Like, his bank account was going like this without any sort of intentionality. So I think that has helped us, that you can nerd out all day, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a natural, have a good discipline around how you spend money. And you see people making a lot of justifications for, maybe some choices aren't the best with finance, but so I think it helps, I think, to recognize again your areas of weakness and then build in ways to, mitigate those weaknesses or help grow in those areas. Like, that's been helpful for us, I think. Being an accountant definitely doesn't make me good with money, but I do care to learn. I care to learn about how, I can do better in those areas. I would much rather not mow the lawn as well. I just want you to know. That's something I outsource till the day I die.
Well, it's another interesting personality note too, because I've noticed that for me in business. So from a business perspective, I'm probably a little bit closer to Luke, for example. Like, okay, I could nerd out over a business plan, and I've done it, right? But what I've noticed actively is, like, it's the more structure I put on, the less effective I am. And I wish I could understand that fully, because you talk to any advanced mentor, teacher, coach, and I'm like the antichrist to their model. but I've personally noticed, and I've had to like work around it, where it's like, if I can't be in the chaos of the moment. That's huge. You can't do that. But I also can't have my entire year planned out, business loan, every dollar in a budgetary. That doesn't work either. So there's this in between where like I have to be able to pivot with the moment and the shifts of the wind, but also organized enough that there's at least a North Star there. And then that's
Yes.
my happy sweet spot.
Yes. Oh, agree completely. I agree with that. I think at the end of the day, yeah, too much planning and detail and structure. And I think business plans are overrated, to be honest, because you never know what changes, what economic changes, what business changes, what technology changes are going to throw your plan out the window. So I'm in total agreement. I think North Star is such a key phrase. If you don't know where you're going, if you don't have any kind of vision, then you don't know if the decision you're making today is going to help or hurt where you don't know you're going. So I think having that North Star, a lot of times when we make decisions, it's because we've already figured out our model. And honestly, our whole team knows that model. So we figured out our model. So when we make a decision, all we say is, okay, in 2 years, when we have both of those offices full, is that decision today still going to make sense? Like we need to, but it is not our style to micromanage, not micromanage each other, the more you can clear things and distill things down into simple principles. If you can have 3 company values instead of 13, I think that's better. So I'm with you on that. I think a North Star is kind of a great concept for how to have enough guiding principles to get you somewhere and kind of enhance your team's lives, and yet be agile enough, because small business, you have to be agile. There's no other option.
Yeah. Well, it has been the most rewarding I feel like for me, year 5 is where it's starting to, so you have that North Star and you're trudging towards it, right? And what's wild is you're kind of like, I don't know if this scales, or I don't know if this will work, or I don't know if, especially when you're trying to, like you said, you're trying to do a shift in the industry that's like, if everybody else does it this way, is my way even going to work? And then you find at years in, and you're like starting to get feedback that like, oh, wait, is it working? Are we actually headed to that North Star? Is it actually going to work out the way you expected? So anyway, I don't know, beautiful thing. But so now to jump back to, so you've been very purposeful about your culture, and I love what you're describing. You're describing a scenario where, women that's like, wait, I can have a family and a career, and we can grow it, and I don't need to be micromanaged. But then you've also described a world where it's like, we've got some people where it's like, let's throw more chaos in the middle of it, because why not? That's what we thrive on. And then another group that are like, no, we got to be more strategic and paced out. And it's like, how do you have an open position or role. How do you decide you've mentioned at least 2 wildly different personalities, if not all the ones in between. How are you finding out who to hire for this role? And then also, if you can kind of give me the evolution, because I'm guessing you're describing E-Myth, which I love. I still use abdicate, however you pronounce that, versus delegate all the time. And so, help me out with how you started hiring people, when you started to see a flow, and how you zeroed in on that and what that looks like now.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, truth be told, I don't think a lot has changed in how we hire. And I wish I could say that it had changed tremendously, because we've grown and we've used data and but that's not the case. I think we have a couple of core principles that have maybe been enhanced over time, but they've stayed the same, which is we're that group that's going to hire for personality and character over skill set. We're going to teach, and you and I have talked about that, I think, multiple times. We're going to teach for skill set all day long. But I do think a third component that we did learn along the way is aptitude. So we've hired where it's like character is great, personality is great, good team fit. But then we realized we can keep trying to teach them accounting. It's just not their thing. Like, they don't love this. And so just because they took the accounting course doesn't necessarily mean like that's where they thrive. So aptitude has been really important. Just because we can teach them the skill set, is do they have the right personality type for that role that we have? So that's probably been our trickiest piece is aptitude. If they have a great character and personality, are we putting them still in the role that conforms with their personality? But for the most part, we've been really consistent since day one, and that's why I think a lot of the folks that we hired in the beginning are still here and part of, the leadership of the team now. We've always tried to, really follow that model of like, do you have that personality and character fit and values, and then the rest we can really. And in fact, we want to train you on the rest because we want to train you in our way. So that we've stayed pretty consistent. So there hasn't been a huge adventure there. It's been refined over time, but yeah.
Well, an aptitude is a tricky one that I'm noticing in particular. So, and I'll give you the example most relevant for us, to just, kind of throw it out there. So aptitude-wise, computer technician, I'm actually really good at gauging for aptitude, which is a fascinating thing. And it's kind of a superpower for me because it creates a world where it's like I can have a non-technician with the personality and the mindset and then the aptitude, and then I would know that they will learn at such an accelerated pace from the average, tenured that it works. Okay, so awesome. Sam's got the secret sauce. Well, but administrator, marketing,
Right.
sales, dispatch, these are different aptitudes.
Yeah.
And the computer technician aptitude testing model that I have, that's not going to do anything for necessarily who's going to make a good administrator.
Mm-hmm.
And so, okay, now what do we do there? And frankly, I'm kind of asking. I don't know if it sounds like maybe you haven't fully fleshed it out either, but if you have any thoughts or ideas, because for us, it's very much like it's okay. Well, that's good there, but now how do we hire or plan for this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I have really had to be open to learning. I think that's where I've learned a lot. Some of the stuff I treasure the most about my own professional development is learning types. I'm really big, as you have told you before, I'm really big on the visual, kinesthetic, audio. Like that changed my whole world with my team. Things that I used to find.
What was that?
Learning that body of study that says we have the visual learners, the auditory learners, or the kinesthetic learners. When I sat through one of those trainings and really learned it in a big way, I realized.
I don't know if I know of this.
Oh,
what is
man,
this training?
it's
I'm
game-changing
sitting
for
here.
me.
Maybe it changes me.
Yeah. Oh, so big. To this day, I think it's one of my most pivotal things I've learned. Because I used to find, to be honest, there were certain teammates that's like, why do we have to have another call about that? Or why do we have to talk that through again? Or why do we have to have a whole meeting? And it turns out like it's literally just a function of these different brains on our teams processing information in a different way. And so the same annoyance that I would get about, well, we're going to just have to talk it through one more time. They're feeling the same way when I fire off an email with 3 sentences and it's like, I made a decision, we're moving on. Like their brains are exploding when I do that. So yeah, that has been so game changing for me. It explains Kelly, my operator, our gal that really runs the show here. It talks about how kinesthetic learners have to really touch and feel and test out. And before she bought her car, I hope she appreciates I'm sharing this. Before she bought her car, she test drove it to her house and put the suitcases in the back to make sure they would fit when she closed the trunk. Are you kidding? I show up, I'm like, if the car looks pretty and it looks like it'll fit these 4 kids, let's go. But I'm a visual processor. She is the kinesthetic processor. It changed my whole world with teammates. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. All right. That's fascinating. Yeah, I'm gonna have to learn. I'm gonna have to learn this. I'm gonna have to go through. So it sounds like the
I'll shoot you the name of the lady that
learning
presented it to
styles.
us.
Okay, please do, because I mean I'm aware these people exist, right? Frankly, I think my wife is probably more like in the Kelly. Like so. Okay, I'm similar. So my last car. I negotiated over the phone after
Mhm.
having simply seen the car the night before on the lot while the lot was closed.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and I know half the audience is like, you didn't test drive it, or it's like, well, no, the car looked pretty, and I knew it was going to drive off the lot, and
Yes.
so I called and negotiated and was like, hey, I saw your car last night. I
Mhm.
know I want to buy it, but the price has got to be right. And if the price isn't right, I'm walking. I'm not going to show up on your lot. So I had the sticker price. I'd pre-negotiated him down to that
Yes.
as I walked in to buy the car. And
Yeah.
I know now, talking to somebody like I appreciate Kelly's way of thinking, because my luck in my car would be very much the type, right, where I get home and it's like the one thing that you're like, it doesn't fit the
Yes.
suitcases.
Yeah.
Oh my,
Why did
that's
my
a problem. And then 3 years later, right, you're like, I mean, I love the
Mhm.
car, but it never fits our suitcases.
Right. Yes. And in business application, I have started and thrown out probably 102 software applications for various purposes. Every single time I look at it, I'm like, this is the one. This is all we need. It's going to solve all our problems. The minute I get a username created and I get in, I'm like, this is garbage, and I toss it out. And I would do that to Kelly over and over, to the point that she's like, I'm not going to take it seriously. On the flip side, now that she kind of handles a little bit more of our making decisions and implementing and training, she spends the time to research it. And then when she delivers software to everybody, like, hey, this is the program we're going with, and here's why, everyone trusts her and it works really well, and it's a well vetted program. But she is, she sees things to their completion. She's a researcher. She takes the time. So in the business application of it, I see now what people need, and I'm quick now. My folks that before, I'm like, why do we have to talk about this again? They have to hear. They have to have a conversation. I will proactively say, yeah, do you want to jump on a 15-minute call to talk that through? And I will set the time aside. I won't be like just pinching myself that we're still on the phone. It's like, hey, that's what their brain needs, and that's how they're going to be most effective in this organization. So why shortchange that? So I think learning about things like brain processing types and personality types, it's again, it feels kind of like parenting, in the sense that over time you look back and say, wow, if I could use more patience, if I could try to understand more before I decide, now I see, oh my gosh, this person, I thought this was a weakness. They are the best in our business at X because they are this way. And so that, I think, being open to learning that people are different and they're going to bring a different skill set, and then how can we apply it, has been a big part of personnel and retention. And, it's just been huge, I think.
So I believe you're exactly right. So I want to zero in even more, so we can kind of, the VARC thing is already hugely helpful for me. So are you familiar with the EOS model, out of curiosity?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay, because you're kind of describing a visionary integrator style
Yep.
roles. Is that
Yep.
safe to say?
And what's so funny is I've just know enough from all the popularity it has, that at one point I'm like, well, I'm the visionary and Kelly's definitely the integrator, even though I've never, heard the talk, opened the book, but I know enough about it that I know that.
So, but what I'm kind of curious about is, and again, it kind of comes back to the sort of hiring process a little bit, because all right, so we're talking about hiring for the person and the personality and the aptitude, but then I've also noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I just don't have a wide enough sample size, maybe I haven't interviewed enough people, but it seems like there's moments, right, where it's like the person in the interview doesn't bring you the energy, or maybe you don't click or whatever, but then you have to come back to, I mean, Meghan, you've described just a radically different style from just you and Kelly, a key person in your business, right?
Right.
So, and not to potentially create a wedge, but it's also like, when you guys first met each other, did you know you were going to have the relationship that you have today?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. So yeah, well, I don't think we could have ever known that, because it's like really incredible. It's one of the most humbling things for me, is how much she has grown in our organization and I've grown. We've grown together. That is just like one of the coolest aspects of my life, honestly. So I'm really excited about that. I don't think we could have known. However, did we hit it off? Yes. But there's other personalities in my business that I think the things that have aggravated me at times, they were probably even in the interview process. It was like, well, why are they unsure? When are you going to decide if you want to do the X or you want to do Y? So no, I think that's where I've probably had to take.
What do you mean you need to think about it? Do you
Exactly.
know or not? I mean,
Yes.
come on.
You're right. If it was me, I would have known 5 minutes into the interview. So I think, and again, it's what's best about those people. Like it's what I am just like envious of today is how those differences. So no, I think I've definitely had to learn to maybe, even though we've done a fairly good job hiring and in some sense maybe been a little bit lucky, I've had to learn to, when I sit down with someone, even if we don't completely hit it off from a personality perspective, it might be because they have something that's going to add value to our team. And so just going slower, asking more questions. One thing we try to do that I think has been helpful is we try to meet in different settings. So we'll have a quick virtual meeting like this, and then we'll have maybe a more in-depth traditional one in the office. But then 3 people on the team will take them out to coffee here down the road. And just a casual environment, just get to know them on a personal level. So I think that's something, is trying to put different context around the hiring. It might sound like a lot of work, but it hasn't been a lot of work. And then we want them to stick around, so why not put the work in on the front end to just see if it's a good culture fit both ways, for them too. Like they could meet with us for coffee and say, wow, when you put them all together, they're crazy. So yeah, it's worth the investment, I think, to spend that time. But yeah, today I value what before just aggravated me. I actually value it today in a lot of our differences.
Are you okay? I like what you're describing. So like maybe it's an addition of the team, right? And so you take them on more interviews and in different avenues. Would you say that's generated? And then I think back to the old hire slow, fire fast, which is exactly what you're describing. Hire slow, right?
Yeah.
Has that created a success rate where you haven't had to fire fast, or are you you're operating both of those?
Oh yeah, operating both for sure. I think I would say we have had less turnover than probably is normal in the 10-year period. But I fully adhere to the hire slow, fire fast mentality all the way. In the sense that it's not like fire fast means you made a mistake, you're gone. But for me, what fire fast means is you better have definitions or expectations around whether or not that person's going to work out. So it needs to be like, okay, this was an issue that rose to the level of we need to confront it. If that's the case, then it usually surfaces again if it's a chronic thing for that person, like behaviorally. If it's something that's chronic to them, it'll surface again. After about 2 conversations, it's like, do you understand this can't happen again? I need to know yes or no. And are you okay with that? Because you might say, we don't allow this behavior. And if you really have the conversation, the person might say, well, I don't accept that. Okay, then we can part ways mutually. But at the end of the day, there has to be something clear cut that says really well defined. This is a behavior that is not in conformance with our culture. You have to say it so clearly so that when it happens again, it's easy to say it's not working. Like we value you as a person. We appreciate what you've done for us so far. But, we've had this many instances, it just doesn't work. We wish you the best. But I think when you don't have really clear-cut expectations, you can just keep having conversations that are not productive. And, yeah, so I adhere to the principle of hire slow, fire more quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a good and interesting one in that, unfortunately, no matter how much you try, you're never going to quite know the person until they're in the role. And it starts to harken back to, I can understand why firms more capable of this almost seem to hire in cohorts, where it's like, we need 3 people to fill the role. We know if we hire 5 of them, 2 are going to wash out or quit or get fired. So, we hire in cohorts of 5. I mean, your worst case scenario, right? Especially if you're capable of sizes like that, everybody sticks around, in which case your churn is likely to.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing. It's had me thinking more about that mindset, but it's also tricky because it's like, you don't want to be unfair to anybody, right? And if you're hiring in a
Right.
cohort and you can't afford the whole cohort, then you've got
Mhm.
this awkward situation of like, ooh,
Yeah. And there's some attitude around there of like, it was kind of like the attitude that, oh, when there's not enough staff, there's just not enough staff and we're just all going to be surviving and not thriving because there's not enough labor out there. And I never like fell into that like Eeyore sort of, yeah, it's true. We're like unemployment rate and whatever. It's true. We didn't
hmm,
have a lot of options maybe as a small business economy, but I wouldn't fall into the, well, that means I'm not going to be able to hire someone good, or I'm just going to have to pay X. I didn't do that. I feel the same way
hmm,
about hiring in that, well, it's just we're just gonna have a certain level of churn. I know we'll have some churn. I know people are gonna leave, and I've had to like accept that. But at the same time, I'm not like, well, we're just gonna have that 20% churn and everybody else. Like, no, I'm gonna keep trying. I want to hold on. I love these teammates, and I want to hold on to them as long as I can, as long as they want to do this work in some capacity, and I keep at it, and we'll see in another 10 years if that's how I feel. But I would rather spend the time and invest and have conversations. We have regular check-ins. Um, I really try to invite people into where are we going, where, like
yeah.
get brainstorming, get feedback about where do we want to be. So I want to hold on to people as much as I can. But if you're not working, I don't want to hold on to people that are creating a negative environment or not
Yeah.
able to follow the few rules that we do have. I don't want to hang on to those folks. But if you're a great teammate, I want you to be here as long as you're willing to. So
No, and I think that's the mindset to have. It comes back to kind of like we pulled it off because nobody told us we couldn't. Like we
yeah,
didn't know
yeah.
that the rest of the world doesn't work this. So like yes, I know exactly what you're talking about because a readily available example to me that I can think of is like we don't have a client churn percentage much of at all. It basically doesn't exist. And I've had people specifically tell me, "Oh, that's a problem." But then it's
Yeah.
also kind of funny cuz I've had other people when they actually bother to get in and look at it all, we're like, "Oh, this is like the ideal scenario. Why would you want this to be different?" And I'm like, "I don't want it to be different. I'm just being told that
I have a problem.
it's
I didn't know.
it's odd enough that I'm supposed to have a problem. Something's broken. People aren't leaving." And
Don't you love
and
that in
so
business? There's just arbitrary business rules that like yeah.
yes, it's fascinating and interesting. I think as we start to understand business more, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Like I don't know, the more I talk to private equity folks, the more I'm kind of
Mhm.
like, ah, I get it now. Okay, I
Mhm.
see where you're coming from, but I also see the
Yeah.
flip side of that, where it's like that may not be that's
Mhm.
not the small business soul necessarily. Let's put it that
Right.
way.
Right.
So anyway, okay. Well, we've been at it a decent bit here. I
Yeah.
think we could probably start to wrap up. There's two standardized questions towards the end here
Love
we
it.
like to ask everybody. So we have a motto over here. If we've seen further, it's by standing on
Mhm.
the shoulders of giants.
Oh, I have
Who's a
seen you post that.
yes? Who's been a giant in your life that you'd like to pay
Mm.
homage to in this moment?
Oh man, that's a good. Hmm. I mean, I think I am just gonna go with the person that we've already talked about. But it's honestly Kelly. And I think the what that question kind of implies is like maybe somebody that is like a role model or like has already done it, has already been there. Um, but it's the person that I always want to kind of pay a lot of respect to and acknowledge in our firm because honestly, as the EOS model, the visionary and the integrator, us visionaries would be so lost without the person that holds it all together, makes it make sense, keeps going steady Eddie. Like, Hovee and Co. would not be the firm that it is or the team that it is without her. Like, it wouldn't be the same experience for clients. It wouldn't be the same experience for teammates. And so that's the person that, whether or not it fits the question perfectly, that's the person that I'd want to, really
No,
recognize in.
it's the spirit of the question. Actually, it leads to another non-scripted one though, which is how did Meghan find a Kelly?
Hmm. Well, the shortest answer is Craigslist. So But I think my those folks that are really in my inner circle in business that are my most trusted, could count on them no matter the circumstance. It's people that it was more about who they were, the person, and like their level of care and their level of care for other people and their attitudes. Those are the people that I chose to engage with and have a business relationship with, regardless of their numbers, their stats, their reputation. And so that's how I found Kelly, and that's how I found kind of all the people that I consider to be in my inner circle in a longer term sense. And I think that's something that served me really well. I don't know, but this is an extra story and you can cut it, but it's one of my favorite stories. And I can't remember if I've told you, but Michaela, who's one of our CFOs, who is in a similar vein, when I interviewed her, again, to your questions earlier, she was a nanny. She had a 2-year-old. She was pregnant. She was getting her associate's degree in accounting. And then she also wanted to come work for us full time, leave the nanny thing and work. And she didn't have any tax experience, and she was my first hire that I was going to try to start replacing myself. And I just loved her. And so I went home, and her situation on paper didn't make a lot of sense for the position. And I went home and I told Luke and I told my sister all about her. And they were like, "Oh, you can't hire someone like that. That doesn't make any sense. They've never done tax, and they're, and then they're pregnant and and they're like, that's not going to work." And I'm like, okay. And then on that Monday I went back to work and I'm like, "You're hired. Will you join us?" And so all that to say, I think the Giants, the people I respect the most, I've cared a lot more about kind of who they are, and I've let the rest kind of speak for itself.
That's cool. So the last question is, if you had one general rule of thumb in life, I'd say, that you've found to be true again and again and again. Oftentimes these are the pithy sayings that somebody told us that are like, there it is again. What would it be?
True in life. Just in life. Right?
Or it could be in business. It's that guiding principle that you've found just to be true, and it's led you.
Yeah. I think it would be kind of what I said earlier, but as a human being, I really do. I want to be happy and deeply fulfilled. And that extends to all areas of your life. So business, personal. And to that end, I don't think, you can experience that without recognizing the places you need to grow and then being open to growing in those areas. Literally starting with just openness to growing. So that really is my principle, because it's affected everything. I wouldn't have a business without that. I would have given up a long time ago. It's hard. So, I want to be happy and deeply fulfilled, and that means doing for others. And I think you can only do that if you recognize the areas in your life that need some attention and need some personal growth, and then repeat, do it again. And I think that's when you stumble into fulfillment. So.
That's good. Thank you so much for joining me today, Meghan. I've really enjoyed this time with you.
I always love chatting with you, Sam. This has been a blast. I hope some of it's usable.
All of it. All right. And with that, I'll say goodbye, everybody.
Hello, everybody. I wanted to thank you for listening to today's episode. It's such a blessing to be able to interview such fantastic individuals. If you're interested in listening to more, we look to post every Thursday at 10 a.m. You can find us on YouTube, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Thanks so much. Have a blessed day.